welcome to the City Club of Portland's Friday Forum, Oregon's premier public affairs forum. I'm Sharon VanSickle-Robbins, president of City Club, and I would like to welcome you all, those of you here with us today at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio or watching on Portland Community Media's CityNet 30. Thank you for joining City Club today on January 28th for this week's Friday Forum. In consideration of those sitting close to you and those in our radio and television audiences, will everyone in the room please make sure your cell phones are silenced? Today we will hear about how we can improve the business environment in Oregon, increase our private sector employment, and enhance our quality of life. But first, some announcements. I'd like to thank our media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine, and I'd also like to offer our appreciation to the Friday Forum corporate sponsors whose generous financial support makes these City Club luncheons possible. We're extremely pleased to have as our winter quarter sponsors Stoll Reeves, The Standard, and West Coast Bank. Please join me in offering them our sincere appreciation. If your company or firm would like to be a City Club sponsor, please contact City Club staff at the back of the room or call the City Club offices. This spring, the club will offer a coordinated series of thought-provoking programs that will challenge conventional political wisdom and explore genuinely innovative and long-term solutions to Oregon's fiscal crisis. Kicking off with a talk by Governor John Kitzhaber on March 4th, City Club's Friday Forums and other events will investigate new ways to stimulate economic development, improve government services, and ensure adequate revenue. Keep your eyes open for more about our spring series entitled From Crisis to Opportunity, Exploring Solutions to Oregon's Fiscal Challenges. And now to today's program. Oregon's unemployment rate has been stuck at 10.5% or higher since early in the Great Recession. Furthermore, a recent economic study reveals that the Portland regional economy suffers from lagging personal income and wages and has fallen behind cities like Seattle, Denver, and Minneapolis. Today, the heads of the state's largest business groups will discuss how we can put Oregonians back to work. Our first speaker today is Sandra McDonough. She has served as president and CEO of the Portland Business Alliance, Greater Portland's Chamber of Commerce, since 2004. Before joining the Alliance, she worked in the energy industry for 2 decades. She has nearly 30 years of civic and community leadership and service in the Portland area. Today's second speaker is Duncan Wyse. Duncan is the president of the Oregon Business Council, a position he's held since 1995. Prior to this position, he was executive director of the Oregon Progress Board. He currently serves on the Oregon State Board of Education and holds numerous other civic positions. Today's third speaker will be Jay Clemens, the president and chief executive officer of Associated Oregon Industries since 2006. Previously, he served as president and CEO of Chambers of Commerce in Washington, Idaho, and Oklahoma, and served as vice president of the Association of Washington Business. And our final speaker will be Ryan Deckert, who was named president of the Oregon Business Association in 2007. Before joining OBA, Ryan represented Washington County, serving 2 terms in the State House of Representatives. He was completing his second 4-year term as a state senator when he assumed his current position. And now please help me welcome today's first speaker, Sandy McDonough.
Thanks, Sharon. I'm happy to be here today, and I'm especially happy that I'm here with my partners from the state's 3 statewide business associations. We work together regularly on a variety of issues. As Sharon said, the Portland Business Alliance is the regional chamber of commerce, and we focus primarily on issues facing the metro region. On statewide issues, we follow the lead of the organizations represented by my colleagues here today, and we work under the Oregon Business Plan, which Duncan will discuss today, and Jay and Ryan will follow with some information about some specific issues that we're working on. One area that we've worked on particularly successfully is research, especially with the work that we've done with Eco Northwest for the Oregon Business Plan. Last year, ECO did the Circle of Scarcity report, showing that the state faces a decade of deficits starting this year with a $3.5 billion shortfall in the current services budget, and each biennium from now till 2017, the state will have about a $3 billion deficit if we don't change course. So what's happening to cause these deficits? First, the cost of government has continued to go up. And more importantly, the growth in tax revenues has not kept pace with the growth in government costs. Wages and incomes in the state have declined relative to the national average. And in an income tax state like Oregon, declining wages and incomes means less revenue for important public services like education, human services, and public safety. And it's that squeeze that we're seeing in Salem today. Last year, we decided to take a closer look at the data, focusing on the economic health of the Portland region. The Portland region is the economic engine of the state. Tax revenue generated here supports schools from Ontario to Brookings, as well as the schools in our own region. When Portland declines, the entire state is impacted. We started by taking a look at how Portland Metro compared to Seattle Metro, then expanded the study to compare our region not just to Seattle, but also to Denver and Minneapolis. These are three areas that we frequently compare ourselves to in best practices surveys. What we found was troubling. 40 years ago, using average wages and incomes as our measurement, Seattle, Denver, Minneapolis, and Portland were pretty much the same economically. But over the decades, that shifted. Since the late 1990s, Portland's wages and incomes have declined relative to the national average and relative to these peer cities. Today, per capita income in the Portland region is 16 to 21% behind Seattle, Denver, and Minneapolis, and we're also below the national average. We also looked at cost of living, and yes, it is more expensive to live in Seattle, but Portland is ranked costlier than both Denver and Minneapolis. More important is affordability. How much can you buy when you compare the costs in your region to our wages and incomes? The metrics show that among the 4 regions we studied, Denver was the most affordable and Portland was the least affordable. That is not good news for Portland area families. So what's causing the decline in wages and incomes in this region? There's lots of factors. For one, fewer people work here. According to Eco Northwest studies, less than 66% of Oregonians over the age of 16 are in the workforce, slightly less than the national average, and that number has declined over the last decade. When we do have jobs, we spend fewer hours per week at work. Oregon ranks number 50 among the states for average hours worked per week, which I think probably means we have a lot of underemployed people in part-time jobs. Looking at the kinds of jobs we have in the Portland region, we have relatively a lower paying mix of jobs, and then when you look at specific sectors, the jobs that we do have in them tend to be lower paid compared to similar jobs in other regions like Seattle. Eco Northwest tells us that we have fewer professional service jobs like lawyers, accountants, and consultants and such than, say, Seattle again. And a contributor to that probably is the fact that we have lost some large headquarter companies, and those are the companies that tend to hire those kinds of professional service jobs. Another important factor is education achievement. Our report showed that we need to do better in that. Portland's high school graduation rank lags behind Seattle, Denver, and Minneapolis. We also are behind on the percentage of high school students that go on to a 4-year college, and we lag on college affordability. Oregon ranks 44 among the 50 states on college affordability. That's bad news for Oregon families also. So 2 data points that really jumped out of it at us as we did this report. First, the declines that we identified were not the result of the national economic downturn that we've all experienced the last 2 years. Rather, what we saw was a long-term trend that began more than a decade ago, indicating to us that there are underlying factors that we need to address. And second, it was a startling loss of jobs in Multnomah County. Most of the report looks at regions, but we decided to dig deep into Multnomah County to see what was going on there. Over the 10-year period ending in 2009, Multnomah County lost some 26,000 private sector jobs. If we want our state's largest city to stay healthy, we've got to stop that trend and turn it around. So that's a very quick overview, and before you think that I'm just Nelly negative, there was some good news. We do have a very strong small business sector, stronger than in most states, and our international trade base is very strong and getting stronger. I would be happy to provide information about those findings as well, but I want to close by making one point. You will see that our report, which is in the back of the room, focused only on numbers. We deliberately did not draw conclusions about policy actions that we need to address to turn the trends around. What we wanted to do was to save that discussion until we could bring together public and private leaders in the region to have a broader discussion about how we should approach the issues. We did that last week at a regional jobs summit, had a phenomenal discussion, and we do have a broadly agreed upon game plan that we need to move forward with that brings together both public and private leaders. And we'll be publishing that report shortly. So thanks very much, and I'll turn it over to Duncan.
Thank you, Sandy. It's really a pleasure to be here with my partners. We are working together like never before to focus on the challenges that Sandy so eloquently described. My assignment is to provide an overview of this year's Oregon business plan, and then Jay and Ryan will go into more of the details and talk about implementation. First, what is the business plan? It's a collaborative effort among a variety of business groups to come up with a common playbook for Oregon's economy. Over the past 8 years, through our leadership summits and dialogues with elected leaders, we have done a lot of work with the business plan and implemented a wide range of initiatives ranging from transportation, land use, education investments, and forest management. And while we're proud of those accomplishments, as we developed the business plan this past year, we confronted the deep long-term challenges that Sandy just mentioned, and really caused us to reflect deeply about what we need to go forward. Frankly, we do have too many Oregonians who are out of work and we do face an unprecedented fiscal crisis. Over the past 2 years, our private sector has shed thousands of jobs. Our income, as Sandy mentioned, continues this long-term slide. This jeopardizes the financial security of many families, and in turn, the faltering economy also has led to declining revenues for public services. And in those public services, in turn, especially in education, threaten to further harm to our economy. So it's a very toxic cycle, and it's one we've got to break if we're going to go where we want to go in our state. So this past year, the Oregon Business Plan Steering Committee, which includes the 4 of us, our chairs, and other business leaders from around the state, took a hard look at the data. We toured the state, we talked with business leaders, public leaders, we talked with a lot of folks, and we developed a fresh version of the plan, which we presented at the December summit just this last month. And it provides a roadmap on how to break out of this toxic cycle into what we call the circle of prosperity. And our work, while building on the previous efforts, quite frankly, has led us to try to step up our game. We need business to be more involved, and we need our public sector to take on even greater challenges than they have before. This is a special opportunity, an important opportunity for our state if we're going to turn around, again, this very toxic cycle. The response to the plan last December was very positive. We're united as a business community, and I am really thrilled with the response by our elected leaders in both parties, the governor and our legislators. So let me talk about the plan. The plan this year starts with a goal, 25,000 jobs per year for the next 10 years, and we want to raise our level of wages and income to above the national average by 2010. It's an ambitious goal, a big goal, but it's doable, we believe, if we get our act together. And we're really pleased that Governor Kitzhaber embraced these goals in his inaugural address this month. Next, we present a vision for the economy. We imagine what the economy would look like if we were to achieve these goals. We believe to raise our wages and earnings, we've got to be a place where innovative industries operate in a way that they are very competitive globally. We want to be the best in a number of areas where our companies are really world-beating in serving their products and services around the globe. Now, we can imagine this because It's here right now, and I always want to stress this. We are world leaders in forest products. We are the leader in semiconductor. We are leaders in footwear, sports apparel. We're leaders in green building. We're leaders in lots of areas. What we need to do is take those leadership positions in these and many other industries and lift them up and see more of them. We've got to applaud the work we're doing here and do more of it. We need to celebrate our successes. When we talk to those leaders about what they need in terms of the environment they want to operate in that would give them the boost they need to be globally competitive, we hear really very similar things from everyone. We've boiled it down into a recipe, which we call the 4 Ps for prosperity. It's about people. We need talented people to drive innovation. That's why we've always put such an emphasis on education, and in this plan this year, we're really thrilled that the governor has embraced a new way to address budgeting and delivery in the education continuum. We need to be a great place to live, that attracts talented people and retains a high-quality workforce. We need to focus on productivity. There are a variety of factors critical to business health, ranging from energy rates, tax policy, healthcare costs, permitting, to name a few, and we put some ideas together on how to improve the productivity in Oregon to give our businesses a boost this year. Finally, pioneering innovation, the ability to generate new ideas from universities and elsewhere to create the venture capital funds and put people together to create new products and services, a key component of what it takes to be globally competitive. And again, we have agendas in the business plan that would address these as well. What we stress in the business plan is the 4 Ps for prosperity are comprehensive, and you can't just focus on 1, 2. Most people will say, yeah, this is important, but what we hear is all 4 are important. We've got to recognize that a strong quality of life is important, and so is keeping business regulation and costs down. We need to recognize that a quality education is very important, and also we need a tax structure that supports strong, healthy companies. We need to take pride in our quality of life. We also need to take pride in the fact that we create great products and services here, and we need to celebrate that. So with this framework in mind, and based on what we heard in this last year, we this time recommended 2 broad sets of policy initiatives for the year ahead. First, we need a vigorous, broad-based commitment to job creation and retention. And this year, we present 10 ideas on the specific ideas on how to grow the economy with really an emphasis on short-term prosperity. There are no magic bullets here. Clemens will talk about them, but collectively they will build confidence and in our economy. We're really pleased that on the second day of office, Governor Kitzhaber met with the Business Plan Steering Committee and others and addressed each of the 10 initiatives and began to put a game plan together for how he was going to tackle each one. We're also really thrilled that the legislative leadership have embraced these ideas, and I think they're going to weave into the legislative session, as Jay will comment on. The second broad policy initiative, and by far the most challenging for us, is to get our fiscal house in order. We face, as Sandy mentioned, an unprecedented fiscal crisis in our state, putting our public services and our economy at risk. We need to get our fiscal house in order. We cannot continue the path we're on, which is shifting revenues to social services and public safety away from education, which is the vital element for growing a strong, healthy economy. If we keep this path we're on, the economy will continue to slide, our incomes will continue to draw down, we'll have less revenue for the public services, and we will continue the cycle we've been talking about. Governor Kulongoski started the dialogue through his reset cabinet, and we're thrilled that Governor Kitzhaber has shown his commitment to work with the legislature to carry out a very bold agenda on public services redesign. The business plan supports the governor's agenda to build a long-term outcomes-based budget. We're really delighted by his interest in building a new way to deliver education services, his interest in healthcare, public safety. All are critical elements of what it's going to take to get our fiscal house in order. We also are recommending a focus on tax policy, especially looking at the reserve funds. We do not have enough dollars in our reserve fund. We 2 years ago recommended looking at the kicker as a way to fill it, looking at some targeted tax reductions to get the economy moving. We need to have a comprehensive look at the revenue system. This is not a simple agenda that we're putting forth. It's an agenda that will require commitment across party lines, across the state, but I think if you can visualize a place where a strong, healthy economy provides the revenues for quality public services, and those quality public services then provide the base for a strong, healthy economy. We have a recipe, a prescription for how we can grow the state in a very prosperous way. If we can agree on that path together, I think we have the opportunity to do something very exciting over the next decade, and that's what we're about to do. Thank you, and Jay.
Good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here with my friends and visit with you today. I'm going to just start up quickly and get into the 10 initiatives to promote high-wage, high-value jobs in Oregon that the business plan is focused on during its work. There are 10 points, and I'm going to give you the very high altitude look at these points, but what I do is encourage you, when you have a moment, to get on the internet and go to the OregonBusinessPlan.org and look at these 10 points, and there's a very good sketch underneath each one of them about some of the areas that these points get into. First of all, we believe that we need to support the Oregon Inc. agenda and support and accelerate successful models for improving product innovation and technology commercialization in the state. Technology transfer is a big issue, has been for decades across this country, getting technology out of the innovative stage, out of universities, and turning it into real products, real companies, real business, real jobs. We think there are things that can be done here to accelerate that process. Secondly, better structure and align Oregon's business development tools. Our incentive programs, our financial programs, our financial resources for stimulating business development and business growth. We're very pleased that one of the initiatives that the governor set out on right away before he even took office was organizing a group to take a look at these issues and look at things like funding for the Oregon Growth Account, management of the Oregon Investment Fund, loan programs, incentive programs. One of the things that I particularly like is streamlining the management and delivery of all of the state's business finance tools and incentives. Right now, if you look at them, the management and control of them is kind of scattered around in different places in the state, and they need to be in one place, or at least highly coordinated. Third, simplify and streamline the regulatory and permitting process. During the development of the Oregon Business Plan, I traveled around the state with Duncan and Jeremy and Pat Wrighton, the chairman of the business plan. And one of the things that we heard virtually in every community that we visited was the difficulty of doing anything in the development business. The difficulty of creating a job, of siting a company, of building a building, of developing a piece of ground, even if it was sited for industrial development. And there's a lot of frustration around the state. And we think that without sacrificing our quality of life, our environment, or anything else, the processes that guide that can be cleaned up a lot. And so we're hoping that we have a great deal of focus on that as we move forward in the upcoming session and afterwards. Secondly, along the same lines, making industrial land ready and available for the creation of high-quality jobs. Now, a high-quality job in Portland Metro is probably different than it is in Klamath. There's different scales, but consistently what we're hearing around the state is that we need to take a look at how we make land available, how we make infrastructure available to land that's designated for industrial use and job formation, and address some of the regulatory barriers that we run into. The fifth issue is to advocate for forest management of federal and state lands. Along with that, to utilize woody biomass for renewable energy. That's an issue that became quite political here just a few years ago about what's renewable energy and what isn't. There's a lot of momentum around the state to make woody biomass a renewable energy issue again, and we're very supportive of that. 6, accelerate energy efficiency efforts. You've probably all heard the governor speak about refitting schools. That's a start. It's an easy way to start with some jobs in the private sector as well as do good in public buildings. And so we're very supportive of that. Advance infrastructure projects that create jobs and strengthen our economic foundation in the state. A couple of years ago in 2009, we all worked together along with many others to pass a transportation package that is putting money into the state's transportation system as we speak. That process is creating thousands of jobs in our economy. We think that we need to do some more work on that. We need to do what we can to accelerate the location of electric and national gas transmission infrastructure. As we grow, as we evolve, those things are going to be critical to us. The Columbia River crossing is one of the things on our list. Again, it is not a local issue. This is a West Coast issue. It's a major transportation issue. It's affecting many of the businesses in our state, up and down the Columbia River and around the state. We hear from companies in Medford that get stuck going across our bridge to take things to market, and we can't do that anymore. So we're very interested in seeing that issue move forward as quickly as we can. Authorizing water withdrawal from the Columbia River during high flow conditions. There is scientific evidence that when the river's running high, it's not good for salmon. And so why not take some water out and feed the agricultural lands in Oregon? And we're very interested in seeing reasonable changes in policy in that area so that we can take care of thousands of acres of land in eastern Oregon and create jobs and public sector revenues that go along with that. We're interested, the 10th thing on the list is interested in taking a look at our tax structure and making very targeted changes in our system. Things like capital gains, extended research and development tax credits. We want to retain BETC, the Business Energy Tax Credit, in a modified form. And we are interested in not opening up another battle, but taking a look at the tax changes that came out of the 2009 legislature and were voted on last year, in doing a good analysis of what the impact is on particularly small and medium-sized businesses in this state. Those are the 10 points. Again, I would encourage you to go to the business plan website. There's a lot more about those under that. But those points came out of a lot of work that occurred not only around the state, but around the business plan table with many, many partners. One of the messages I want to leave you with is you see the 4 of us sitting up here. There's many more of us out there that are working on this. I have not seen the corporate public affairs community, the association public affairs community rally like they are today in Oregon. We actually have a group that gets these folks together on a regular basis. We all participate, and it's called the Oregon Committee. And that group is formally behind the business plan. Many people in that group have their fingerprints on elements of the business plan. It's very much a collaborative effort, and the business community is moving forward together to help make some of these things happen. Last point I want to make is I'm very optimistic during this session. The other thing that I'm seeing that I have not seen often before is that our public officials are sending out a message, the tone of which is collaborative, positive, and problem-solving oriented. That crosses political aisles. Yesterday we had in our executive committee meeting at AOI, Democrat co-speaker Roblin for 45 minutes, and the things that he said about how he is working with the other side of the aisle, with co-speaker Hannah, how the committee structure is working, how the co-chairs of committees are working together, are things that I have not heard here before. It's remarkable. It's very, very positive. He said something that I don't think he'd mind if I repeated. He'd probably like it. He said, you know, everybody that was elected to the legislature this year cares about Oregon. And that's how we're approaching this session. And we're going to solve problems together. You know, I don't think we have to be Pollyanna-ish about, you know, different opinions on things, but that's a very constructive thing that we're seeing happen. We're seeing very constructive actions by the governor. We're very pleased with what he's saying. We're very pleased with what he's doing. And I think we're going to have a good session. We're going to get some things done, and we're going to make it easier for jobs to be created in this state. Thank you.
How we doing, Tom? So this is, and thank you, Jay, and to my friends and peers, this is the classic example of a lunch meeting where everything's been said, but not everyone who said it. So perhaps I will attempt to just make one point, and that is that we have really no time to waste. Those who've read, and I think most probably in this room have, Thomas Friedman's World is Flat book, he begins it in Singapore, third grade classroom, really making the point that they are doing what the eternal human goal is, or best vision, and that is they want what we have. And so if you look at the math and science scores, if you look at the raging global movement for high-wage, high-value jobs, it is no mystery the endeavor that these other global competitors have made, and they provide a decent pathway because you compare it to the decisions we've made in the state of Oregon and federally, and I know Congressman Blumenauer was here earlier. If he's still here, I read, my eyes at a young age are not what they ought to be. I read the piece that the New York Times did on Earl 3 times, and on the unexpected conversation that he's hoping to engender federally of that we must, as a country, and then we would argue also as a state, really fundamentally change the equation on a competitiveness basis. And so all the conversations that we're used to having and party breakdowns that we're used to having, or having a business panel and a labor panel, or it's your March series that you're going to have of really that crisis to opportunity. It is go time for the state of Oregon because we will simply be left behind. And if you look at the decisions that we've made and the research that's been done that Sandy alluded to, we've made all the wrong decisions in this state, whether it's giving our initiative system up, our criminal justice system and public safety to the initiative process so that we doubled our corrections budget at the same time disinvesting almost every single dollar of that out of our post-secondary education, in particular higher education system, to just being fundamentally unwilling and incapable of marshaling the political will necessary to enact reforms in our education system that would allow us to race to the top and be competitive in DC in terms of luring federal dollars to our state because we're boosting student achievement, to having a decent and hopefully a real but thoughtful conversation about labor costs, because that's 3 out of every $4 that the state spends is labor costs. And so you cannot have a rational conversation about moving dollars into your education infrastructure, changing your higher education system, if you can't have that conversation. And we as a state, a person is in this room that helped deliver that conversation to the state 10 years ago, but it's the only time we as a state have really taken on that issue. And the other part is, can you have a human services budget that even with the need, the incredible need that we've had in this state, can it grow at 20% while you continue to disinvest in your intellectual capital? And so that is the effort that we'll be in starting next Tuesday in Salem at the state level, is to really challenge this state to make fundamentally different decisions that we've been unwilling to make as a state consecutively, and we hope to do it all in one 4-month period. Having said that, I know. It's having said that, it's crazy, and maybe it's only Oregonians that would have this optimism, is you can actually see the seeds, whether it be in our higher education system, moving an autonomy package, K through 12, we've marshaled better resources together, and just more folks have said we're going to work together this time. And so that would be my great question to the City Club and to other listeners is, this is our time. It's our time as Oregonians. And those folks that we've sent, that we've elected to Salem and federally, we really need them to up their game in a way that they never have, and to really challenge assumptions and caucus structures and electoral structures and how we fund campaigns, because that builds upon it, and try to do it all in a really abbreviated 6 or 7 month period. And maybe I would end on, and I'll just do it with Earl in the audience, is I've heard so much about the early 70s and what a renaissance in public policy, and I did miss part of that, in public policy that was, but Earl, you were there, and the sense that you were young, he was the youngest ever when he was there, but it's the sense that we need to replicate that in the state. And so you're in this audience today, and folks that are listening, you're well positioned to help move that conversation, and I think we would all consecutively agree we desperately need your help, but the state needs your help. Thank you very much.
The first question for our speakers, as always, will be from our Friday Forum host. Our host today is City Club Governor Steve Rosenbaum. Steve serves as president and CEO of Pop Art, an interactive marketing agency. He serves on City Club's Finance Committee and is a member of the Board of Governors. Steve?
So I had a fun question and a hard question. And I think I'm going to choose the hard question. Maybe I will direct it to Jay. Jay, as I heard your list of 10 things from the Oregon Business Plan that Oregon can be doing to grow jobs and improve the business community, all of those seem to have an immediate, short-term benefit for business and the constituents of the business trade lobby, which I'm also a part of. That I see as we're talking about global competitiveness, and we're competing with China, and we're competing with Europe, and South America, that these other regions of the world are making really long-term investments in their human capital. And we're so willing to put billions of dollars to build a new bridge across the Columbia River. Why not step up and say, hey, look, us as business leaders, we're willing to pay more taxes to fund our public university education systems. Let's throw an extra $1 billion at University of Oregon, at Portland State University, at Oregon State, so I get the Beaver fans too. So is there a willingness by the business community to pay more taxes without a whole bunch of preconditions, so that we can really have world-class education in our university system in Oregon?
Goodness. That's another speech. I think the answer to that is what Ryan touched on when he spoke about how over time we've created an environment in the state that is not necessarily conducive to encouraging the growth of high-value jobs, encouraging growing per capita income, household income in the state. And what I think we all have to come to grips with is how do we keep Oregon competitive to attract those kind of jobs, those kind of opportunities for our kids, for our neighbors, for ourselves moving forward. Taxes are one of the things that businesses look at when they look at expanding in a state versus someplace else, staying in a state versus someplace else, or moving to a state versus someplace else. And it doesn't make any difference sometimes whether someplace else is across the river or across the country or Chicago or Asia or Europe or someplace else in the world. And so I think it's not, I don't think it's a question about whether or not business pays more taxes here. I think it's how does that relate to the competitive environment that we all live in a regional, national, and global economic environment. And if we drive the cost of business up here beyond businesses' ability to compete and create good jobs, then it'll go away. It's as simple as that. And so I think the tax issue has to be kept very much in context with an external environment. And, you know, I'm not going to get into buzz lines like, you know, business doesn't pay taxes, the consumers do, and all of that kind of stuff. But it really boils down to, I've gone around the world and recruited companies and recruited expansions of companies, gone around America and done that. It's fun to do, but I have to tell you, it gets down to cost of doing business. And Oregon has all kinds of wonderful things to offer its citizens, its business community, but that doesn't happen if we don't get a chance to do that, and we're not going to have the chance to do that if we're not a competitive place to do business in. Exactly. If business is healthy here, we will have the tax base to support education.
Steve,
we will have the tax base to support public needs. And so these are things that are not siloed, they're very integrated.
I'd like to add to that. First of all, the 4 business associations that are sitting up here have joined together to call on the legislature to do an overhaul of our higher education system. It's broken. We have a system that is micromanaged by the legislature, with all due respect to the legislature, and we need to give them the opportunity to manage it better. And so college affordability in this state is a huge issue. I went to college on financial aid and scholarships, and I wouldn't have gone probably in today's environment. It just, for a middle-class kid like I was, I don't know how it will happen. But one of the most interesting things that's come out of the Eco Northwest studies was a look at Oregonians' tolerance for taxes. For, was it 30 years, Oregonians for the past 30 years have paid 16% of their incomes to support state and local government. 16% of their incomes, 30 years. They basically have set a ceiling on what they're willing to pay. We do all these things, but the course corrects itself. It's basically a flat line. So where we've concluded is you can have a bloody awful fight over increasing taxes and maybe move the needle a little tiny bit, and then there's some corrections as we've seen in the last year, or what you can do is grow a bigger pot. And that's what we're saying is what we need to do is grow more and better jobs for Oregonians that the state can then tax, and that is how we'll have more revenues for the services that we all think are important.
We will now take questions from the floor. Asking questions at Variety Forums is a privilege of City Club membership. Before asking your question, please identify yourself as a City Club member and ask your question in 30 seconds or less. If I flash this question mark card, it means we are still waiting for the question.
What would you all say if a legislator said to you, you know, people talk to me about taxes, but I look at the richest states in the union, and they have wildly different tax structures and levels of taxation. They told me it was all about the green economy, but now I see China is stealing everything to do with renewable energy anyway. They said Minnesota was a model, but the Minnesota state economist recently acknowledged that they're stagnating, partly because they don't get any share of the growing defense sector of the economy, and we don't either. I heard Texas was a model, but now their budget deficit is bigger than ours. So I don't think anybody knows what the hell they're talking about. What would you say to that?
So Novik always gets like an applause for a question, which is just ridiculous to get questions applauded. And a scale, Steve. You know, Steve, you know what I would say, because you said a legislator, so it's a state-based conversation. As screwed up of the decisions we've made at the state level in terms of whether it's the initiative system or some of the choices that we've made as a state, I would argue that the decisions we made around tax structure are even worse, if that's humanly possible. Because we, and you will not, I do not think you will find an economist that disagrees, that we tax more everything that you want less of. So we tax high on things you want more of: investment, income, highest in the nation, tied with Hawaii. Then when you get to things that you want less of as a society, you have to go to Guam, so they do the 50 states, and then you have to go Guam, Puerto Rico, and then you find Oregon somewhere as 53rd of 50 states in terms of consumption. And so whether that is the underground economy, that is the folks that are visiting the state, you are simply not deriving the revenue. And I hope this state, after this really tough, we were optimistic, but this really tough 5-month period where there is no winners, we will have a shorter school year, which we will not be proud of. We will have really tough conversations about just core things. I hope we come out of it as, is this the financing structure that we want? Because we could do another round of, let's find this tax or that tax, but I think it gets to then a fundamental question of, do we have the structure in place that won't avoid you're going to have a Texas or a California, but it is a much more thoughtful, economist-proven system of taxing things, and you can lower taxes on yourself because you're asking more folks and broadening the base to actually participate in your system.
Mary Valm, City Club member, and this is to the esteemed Duncan Wyse. I don't know if you feel this way a little bit, but I'm feeling a bit like deja vu when we worked together in 1989. It seems that we have had these ideas for decades. And I'm curious as to why, if it's all about location, 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 Oregon hasn't moved, we're still in the Pacific Rim, why we continue to ship our natural resources without value added outside of the state. We have people that need jobs here. Do we have a plan in place to put Oregonians back to work by adding value to the things that we have in this state? And feel free, any of you, but I just wanted to say esteemed Duncan Wyse, because I honor you.
I haven't had it. I was hoping for that fun question, actually. I don't remember. But let's talk about natural resources. I'm glad you raised it. I mean, we are a state blessed with extraordinary natural resources, and in particular in agriculture, we have 250 some crops, very unusual, and in forest products. The reality is, in the last couple decades, in federal forest policy in particular, we've shut down the federal forests. And as Russ Hoflick from the Nature Conservancy says, on the east side of Oregon, and in southern Oregon especially, the result of that is a potential ecological disaster. As those forests burn, these are not natural forests, they're way, way overgrown, they will destroy the ecosystems in those areas. And so the Nature Conservancy has set this as a very high priority. The good news is, if we thin those forests and take some of the wood out, we not only create 2x4s, we create woody biomass, we create lumber that can be used in the secondary wood products industry in Central Oregon that are truly nationally and globally competitive. We have imported wood from New Zealand to feed plants in Central Oregon. That is staggering. It's, as someone said, it's like selling oil to the Arabs. So we have a huge resource which we aren't taking advantage of, so I appreciate that. And I think the good news is, thanks to our federal delegation, all the members, thanks to a lot of leadership in the industry and in the environmental community, I think we're coming to grips with that. And I think we can build a stronger natural resource-based economy, especially around forestry. In the agriculture sector, similarly, what we are seeing is extraordinary value-added products. It's everything from the nursery industry to the wine, the beer, and a lot more organic and other higher value products. And I think you're seeing a real renaissance and growth in that industry. So again, I'm glad you asked it. We tend to forget that in Portland, but we are still a very blessed state on our natural resource, in our natural resource arena, and that gives us great wealth and opportunity if we take advantage of it. Sandy?
Yes, but I want to be very careful and make sure people understand how important international trade is to us. We just completed a study with the port about the value of international trade in this region. 470,000 jobs in Oregon are tied to international trade. In this region, it's 268,000 jobs. Those are high-value jobs, and they're so important to the underpinnings of our economy that we have to understand that and make sure that we value trade and we look for good opportunities. The other statistic we found that we were quite excited about is that the Portland region ranked second nationally among all metro cities for the growth in trade-related or exports in the period that we studied. So this is one of our great strengths that we need to look at how we can build on.
Ray Polani, a City Club member. I have two things that burn on me. One thing, we seems to have almost finished to spend $1.5 billion of local money on storm sewer separation. When are we going to spend somewhat of an equal amount with federal assistance for regional light rail underground? One question. Second question, Columbia River crossing. We're looking at those freeway bridges and we're disregarding completely the old railroad bridge downstream. That is essential for freight, for passenger commuter, and for high-speed rail, which is coming. I think we should concentrate on the railroad bridge and on the light rail bridge to Vancouver. But most of all, we should concentrate first on a subway under the river and under downtown. The East Bank Freeway is ready for redevelopment, and that's what we should be concentrating on. And we would get federal assistance on both. Question, when? What are we waiting for? Stimulus money.
Well, I think, first of all, I agree with you. Transportation investments are really important, and we need to be looking at how we're moving both people and freight. And we believe we need to be looking very closely at freight movement, and I absolutely agree with Mr. Polani that the freight bridge over the Columbia is very important, and it's part of our overall infrastructure. We're actually blessed with two major railroads serving this region, which is one of our strong points in terms of transportation. As we make these local investments, we need to look carefully at how we're spending our dollars and what we get long term, and that's what we should be weighing against it, is what's the cost and return, what can we afford now versus looking at in the future. I agree. I think high-speed rail is coming at some point. We need to be ready for it, and our planning needs to incorporate that.
I'm Nora Michelson, City Club member. There's been a lot of conversation lately from President Obama to Governor Kitzhaber to the mayor, educating us all as a society about what we need to do to create a more business-friendly environment to make business competitive, and none of us can argue with that, of course. I'd be curious, though, whether any of you feel that businesses have a responsibility of some kind as corporate citizens to hire and to hire good paying or to pay good wages. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I think obviously the whole goal of businesses to create great products and services and make a profit. What we're visualizing is are businesses that need high quality, highly talented people and would want to pay those folks high wages. That's why we focus on wages and incomes. To do that, you've got to have an environment where folks can sell products and services and hire folks, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. I also would point out that I think the business community is very focused on investing in larger community assets, whether it's the arts, the human social services, and a variety of other areas. So yes, definitely.
And so the other thing that I think you'll see is tone matters. And so I think you'll see, we just laid out, or you just heard, a pretty ambitious agenda to do a number of different things, local, state, federal, all in short time frame. But I also think you'll see a tone matters conversation, and both from electeds it matters in terms of how you talk about the private sector and growth. That's been surprising to me how much that matters, is just the tone. But I also think you'll see it from the business community. We just were talking to the folks from Genentech who now are up to 400 high-wage, highly valuable jobs here in Oregon and in Hillsborough. And they want to talk about the things they love about Oregon, the reason they decided to grow their company, a globally competitive company here in the state of Oregon, and they're eager to talk about the things that they really like decent schools, if we can hold on to them, a good quality of life, and some incentives that have really worked out for them. And so I think you'll start to see the tone matters on both ends, but I think you'll start seeing that.
Wednesday, I was in a manufacturing plant downstate, and I asked the question about, they employ 1,200 people, very good jobs, many of them union jobs, good benefits, and I asked the question about, are you able to find people to fill jobs in the company? And they said, over time it's been up and down, but right now it's very good. We're able to fill positions here, and we try to fill them from our local community. And it's a small enough community, so it'd feel it. They said, the problem that we have in that area is with some very specialist kinds of engineering positions where we just can't find people in the state to put in those jobs, and we have to go out of state and recruit, which I prefer not to do. It's expensive to do that too. And I said, so what's driving labor availability here right now? And he said, well, that huge plant that's right down the road? They shut down and put hundreds of people out of work last year. And there's some work there, but that plant is being dismantled and shipped to Asia. And, the big question, why? Are there things that we could have done here to prevent that from happening? But, the moral of the story is there's one employer, 1,200 jobs, relatively small community, and they have been there for 40 years, and they care, and they want to employ people there, and they will continue to do that. We need to try to figure out how to keep their neighbor there, and some of the other kinds of companies like that in the state that are in jeopardy.
Hi, Lynn Parsons, City Club member. I have kind of a follow-on question to that. As the four of you have been going around the state talking with business owners, and I'm just going to say maybe the biggest business owners, the Nikes, say in Portland, the HP in Corvallis, some of the bigger employers, what is it going to take? What's going to motivate them? How, when, what do I put here? How, why, and when will they hire again at the levels maybe where they had been and at higher wages?
Well, let's look at the biggest employer in the state, Intel. Thank goodness for Intel in this state. They are gearing up to put thousands of people to work in construction jobs here to build their new generation of their fab plant out in Hillsborough. That was the most phenomenal announcement I've been to in a long time. We are so lucky that they're doing that and they're growing here. What's motivating them to grow? It's their markets. They need the international market. They need to go to that next generation. That's what drives a business, is the consumer at the other end. What drives them to be in Oregon It makes sense for them to be here. They've got phenomenal employers here. We're the center of research for them internationally. And when it comes to what wages they pay, we're in a global marketplace. Employers pay market rate wages. They pay what it takes to get the employees they need. And that's what we need to focus on. So what we have to do is try to attract more high-value jobs that pay those wages to this region.
We have run out of time for further questions and we'll have to stop for today. Join us next week for the State of the County with Multnomah County Chair Jeff Kogan. As we close, please join me in expressing our appreciation to today's guests, Sandy McDonough, Duncan Wyse, Jay Clemens, and Ryan Deckert. We're adjourned.